I stared at the letter in my hands, reading it for the 5th time, hoping the words would somehow change. The crisp letterhead of Morrison & Associates bore news that felt like a physical blow to my chest. Dear Miss Patricia Chen, we regret to inform you that the trust fund established by your late father, Robert Chen, has been liquidated in its entirety. As per the instructions of co-trustee Jennifer Chen Martinez, all remaining assets totaling $147,000 have been withdrawn and the account closed effective immediately. My hands trembled as I set the letter on my kitchen table. The same table where Dad had explained the trust fund 3 years ago, his voice weak from the cancer treatments, but his eyes bright with the satisfaction of a man who'd provided for his family's future. This will take care of your mother's medical expenses, he'd said then, gripping my hand with surprising strength. And there should be enough left over to help you both get back on your feet after everything you've been through. Everything I'd been through. The divorce that had drained my savings, the custody battle that had cost me my house, the job I'd lost because I couldn't balance caring for Mom with the demands of a 60-hour work week. Dad had seen it all, understood the weight I was carrying, and tried to build us a safety net that my sister Jennifer had just stolen. I walked to the living room where Mom sat in her wheelchair, oxygen tank humming beside her chair, watching her afternoon soap operas with the glazed attention of someone whose world had shrunk to the size of our small Portland apartment. At 73, she should have been enjoying retirement, maybe traveling or spoiling grandchildren. Instead, she was fighting emphysema and diabetes while trying to stretch her Social Security check to cover medications that cost more each month than most people's rent. Mom, I said gently, settling onto the couch beside her chair. She looked up with eyes that still held intelligence despite the fog of medication and illness. What's wrong, sweetheart? You look like you've seen a ghost. How do you tell your sick mother that her other daughter has just stolen the money meant to keep her alive? How do you explain that the woman who used to sing lullabies and braid hair has become someone capable of such breathtaking selfishness? I need to make some phone calls, I said instead, about the trust fund. Her face tightened with worry. Is there a problem with the money? I'm not sure yet. Let me figure out what's happening. The first call was to Morrison & Associates, where a polite receptionist confirmed what the letter had already made clear. Jennifer, as co-trustee, had legal authority to liquidate the account. The withdrawal had been processed 3 days ago with proper documentation and identification. The second call was to Jennifer's apartment in Sacramento, where a recorded message informed me that the number was no longer in service. The third call was to her workplace at the dental office where she'd been a hygienist for 5 years. Her supervisor, Dr. Hendricks, sounded confused and slightly annoyed. Jennifer quit without notice 2 weeks ago, he explained. Left me in a real bind, actually. Said she was moving out of state for family reasons. I tried calling her about some patient records, but her phone's been disconnected. Family reasons. The irony burned like acid in my throat. I tried her ex-husband Mark next, hoping he might have some information about where Jennifer had gone or how to reach her. Their divorce had been finalized 18 months ago, but they maintained cordial contact for the sake of their 17-year-old son, Tyler. I've been wondering the same thing, Mark said when I explained the situation. Tyler's been staying with me for the past 3 weeks. Jenny dropped him off one evening and said she needed some time to figure things out. That was unusual but not unheard of. Sometimes she gets overwhelmed. 3 weeks? The timeline made my stomach clench. 3 weeks ago, she'd been asking me detailed questions about Mom's treatment schedule, her medication costs, and the projected expenses for the year ahead. I thought she was being responsible, planning ahead like a loving daughter should. Mark, did she mention anything about the trust fund? About Dad's money? A pause. She said something about coming into some money that would change everything for her. I assumed she meant a promotion at work, or maybe an insurance payout from your father's estate. Coming into money. As if the inheritance had somehow materialized from thin air, rather than being stolen from her dying mother and struggling sister. I need to talk to Tyler, I said. He might know something about where she went. He's pretty upset about the whole thing, Mark warned. Jenny's never just disappeared like this before. Usually when she needs space, she at least tells him when she'll be back. Tyler arrived at my apartment an hour later, tall and lanky with his father's dark hair and his mother's stubborn chin. At 17, he carried himself with the careful dignity of someone who'd learned not to depend too heavily on the adults in his life. Jennifer's pattern of emotional unavailability had taught him early lessons about self-reliance. Aunt Sarah, he said, wrapping me in a hug that reminded me how much he'd grown since I'd last seen him. Dad said Mom took money from Grandma's account? I showed him the letter from the trust company, watching his face process the implications. Tyler was smart, had been accepted early admission to Portland State with plans to study computer science, and he understood immediately what this meant for our family's financial situation. She stole from Grandma? His voice carried disbelief mixed with growing anger. While Grandma needs that money for her medical bills? The trust fund was set up to cover your grandmother's expenses, I explained. Without it, I don't know how we're going to manage her medications, the oxygen equipment, the physical therapy sessions. Tyler's jaw tightened in a way that reminded me of my father when he was thinking through a problem. Dad had always been methodical, patient, the kind of man who analyzed situations from every angle before taking action. Do you know where your mother went? I asked gently. She's been dating this guy, Derek something. Derek Lawson, I think. Real smooth talker, always wore expensive clothes, even though he never seemed to have a regular job. Tyler's voice carried the skepticism of a teenager who'd learned to be wary of his mother's romantic choices. How long has she been seeing him? About 4 months. She met him at some bar in Sacramento. He was always talking about investment opportunities and get-rich-quick schemes. Mom ate it up because she's always complaining about being broke and stuck in the same dead-end job. The pattern was becoming clear. Jennifer had found herself a charming con artist who'd convinced her that stealing from her family was justified if it meant funding their dreams together. Tyler, I need to ask you something, and I want you to tell me the truth. Did your mother say anything about where they were going? Any mention of specific cities or plans? He shook his head, but something in his expression suggested there was more to the story. What is it? I pressed. Tyler glanced toward the living room, where Mom was still watching television, then lowered his voice. The night before she dropped me at Dad's, I heard her on the phone with Derek. They were talking about heading to Vegas first, then maybe Phoenix or somewhere in Arizona where they could rent a cheap place while they figured out their next move. Las Vegas. The city where money disappeared as quickly as it appeared, and people could reinvent themselves without anyone asking uncomfortable questions about their past. Did she mention anything else? Any specific plans or timeline? Derek kept saying they needed to move fast because some business deal was time-sensitive. Mom seemed nervous about the whole thing, but excited too, like she finally had a chance at the kind of life she'd always wanted. The kind of life funded by stealing from a sick woman who'd never hurt anyone. The rage that had been building in my chest since reading the letter finally found its voice. That money wasn't hers to take, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It was meant to keep your grandmother alive and comfortable. Every dollar she stole is a dollar that would have paid for medicine or medical equipment or doctor visits. Tyler's face flushed with anger and shame. I know. I'm so sorry, Aunt Sarah. If I'd known what she was planning. This isn't your fault, I said quickly. Your mother made these choices. You couldn't have prevented them. But even as I said the words, I could see the guilt in his eyes. Tyler was carrying the weight of his mother's actions, feeling responsible for something completely beyond his control. Over the next week, I threw myself into damage control. I called Mom's doctors to explain our financial situation, negotiated payment plans for her medications, and researched state assistance programs that might help cover some of her medical expenses. The bureaucratic maze was exhausting, made worse by the knowledge that we shouldn't have needed help if Jennifer hadn't betrayed us. Tyler started spending more time at our apartment, helping with Mom's care and keeping her company while I navigated the endless phone calls and paperwork. He was gentle with her, patient with her confusion and moments of frustration, displaying a maturity that made his mother's selfishness even more glaring by contrast. You're a good boy, Mom told him one afternoon as he helped her with her medication schedule. Your grandfather would be proud of how you're taking care of family. Tyler's eyes filled with tears that he quickly blinked away. I wish I could do more, Grandma. You're doing plenty, sweetheart. Just being here means everything. That evening, as I was washing dishes while Tyler helped Mom with her physical therapy exercises, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Jennifer's name and my heart leaped with hope mixed with anger. Maybe she'd had second thoughts. Maybe she was calling to explain, to apologize, to make things right. Sarah? Her voice sounded different, strained, defensive, like she already knew why I might be upset with her. Where are you, Jennifer? I kept my voice calm, though my hands were shaking. That doesn't matter. I'm calling because I heard you've been asking questions about the trust fund. You mean the trust fund you liquidated without telling me? The money that was supposed to keep Mom alive? A pause. That money was as much mine as it was yours. Dad left it to both of us. The casual justification made my blood boil. Dad left it in a trust specifically for Mom's medical expenses. You know that. We both signed the paperwork. Mom doesn't need all that money. Her medical bills aren't that expensive, and you're always exaggerating how bad her condition is. The words hit me like physical blows. Jennifer hadn't been to see Mom in over 6 months. She had no idea about the progression of the emphysema, the increasing dependence on oxygen, the mounting costs of medications and equipment. Her oxygen concentrator costs $400 a month to rent, I said, struggling to keep my voice level. Her inhalers are $300 each, and she needs 3 different ones. The physical therapy sessions are $150 twice a week. Her doctor visits, her blood work, her emergency room visits when she can't breathe, it adds up to thousands of dollars every month. You're being dramatic. Mom's not that sick. The denial was so complete, so willfully ignorant, that I almost hung up. Instead, I tried one more approach. Come home, Jennifer. Come see her yourself. Help me take care of her. We can work together to stretch the money that's left. There is no money left. Her voice turned cold. Derek and I had expenses. Starting over isn't free, and we needed capital for some business opportunities. Business opportunities. The euphemism made me sick. You gambled with our mother's medical fund? We invested it. There's a difference. Where are you? I want to talk to Derek, hear about these investments myself. That's not happening. Derek doesn't need to justify our decisions to you. In the background, I could hear slot machine sounds, the electronic chiming and ringing that meant they were in a casino. Not investing in legitimate business opportunities, but literally gambling with Mom's money in some Nevada casino. Bring Tyler home, I said. Whatever you and Derek want to do with your lives is your choice, but bring Tyler back where he belongs. Tyler's fine where he is. Mark can handle him for a while longer. He's not fine. He's worried sick about you and devastated about what you've done to Grandma. He'll get over it. Kids are resilient. The same words she'd used to justify dragging Tyler through her divorce, her depression, her series of inappropriate boyfriends. Kids are resilient, the universal excuse of selfish parents who wanted to believe their choices didn't damage the children who depended on them. When are you coming home? I asked, though I was beginning to suspect I already knew the answer. I'm not. Derek and I are building something new here, a fresh start where nobody knows about our past mistakes. Our past mistakes. As if stealing from a dying woman was just another regrettable decision, like choosing the wrong restaurant or buying an expensive pair of shoes. This is your mother we're talking about. She raised you, loved you, supported you through your divorce and your depression and every crisis you've ever faced. And now it's time for me to think about myself for once. I've spent my whole life taking care of other people, putting everyone else's needs ahead of my own. I deserve some happiness. The self-pity was nauseating. Jennifer had never taken care of anyone but herself. Even during her marriage, Mark had handled most of the childcare while she pursued various hobbies and interests that never lasted more than a few months. What about Tyler? What about your responsibility to him? Tyler's almost 18. He can take care of himself, and Mark wants more time with him anyway. Everyone wins. Everyone except Mom, who needed the stolen money to stay alive. Everyone except Tyler, who was being abandoned by his mother without explanation or apology. Everyone except me, who was now solely responsible for managing our family crisis. I hope Derek's worth destroying your family over, I said. He is. Derek makes me feel alive in ways I haven't felt in years. We have plans, Sarah. Real plans for the future. The line went dead. I stood in my kitchen holding the silent phone, processing the finality of what had just happened. Jennifer wasn't coming back. She'd stolen our mother's medical fund, abandoned her son, and chosen a con artist over the family who'd loved her unconditionally for 35 years. Tyler appeared in the kitchen doorway, his face pale with understanding. He'd heard enough of the conversation to know that his mother had just abandoned him officially. She's really not coming back, is she? He asked quietly. I couldn't bring myself to lie to him. I don't think so, sweetheart. He nodded, accepting the confirmation with the resignation of someone who'd been preparing for this possibility his entire life. Jennifer's love had always been conditional, temporary, subject to change whenever something better came along. It's okay, Tyler said, though his voice cracked slightly. I'd rather be with people who actually want me around. I pulled him into a hug, this boy who was learning too early that blood relationships didn't guarantee loyalty or love. He felt thin in my arms, like he'd lost weight in the weeks since Jennifer had dropped him at his father's house. You're welcome here anytime, I told him, for as long as you want to stay. Thanks, Aunt Sarah, but I think I want to go back to Dad's tonight. I need some time to process all this. After Tyler left, I sat with Mom in the living room, both of us pretending to watch television while actually contemplating the ruins of our family finances. Her oxygen concentrator hummed steadily in the corner, a constant reminder of how much we needed the money Jennifer had stolen. How bad is it? Mom asked during a commercial break. I'd been dreading this conversation, but she deserved honesty about our situation. Bad, I admitted. Without the trust fund, I'm not sure how we're going to cover your medical expenses next month. She was quiet for a long time, processing the implications. Maybe it's time to consider other options. What kind of options? The kind where I stop being a burden to everyone I love. The words hit me like ice water. Mom, you're not a burden. You're my mother, and taking care of you is my privilege, not my obligation. Sweet girl, she said, patting my hand. You've already sacrificed so much for me. Your marriage, your career, your own future. I won't let you sacrifice your savings too. What savings? I tried to inject some humor into the moment. Jennifer cleaned those out along with everything else. Mom didn't smile. I'm serious, Sarah. I've lived 73 years. I've raised 2 daughters, traveled some, loved your father for 42 wonderful years. If it's my time, then maybe it's my time. It's not your time, I said firmly. We're going to figure this out. I'll find a way to pay for your medications and your equipment and everything else you need. With what money? The question hung between us like a challenge. With what money indeed? I was unemployed, financially tapped out, and facing medical bills that would total thousands of dollars every month. Jennifer had left us in an impossible situation, and we both knew it. That night, I lay awake calculating and recalculating numbers that never added up to enough. Even if I found full-time employment immediately, my salary wouldn't cover both our living expenses and Mom's medical needs. Even if I qualified for every assistance program available, there would still be gaps that we couldn't afford to fill. Jennifer had stolen more than money. She'd stolen our peace of mind, our security, our ability to focus on Mom's health rather than constantly worrying about finances. She'd stolen Tyler's childhood and forced him to grow up too fast. She'd stolen my faith in family loyalty and unconditional love. But I wouldn't let her steal Mom's life. The next morning, I started making calls to everyone I could think of who might have information about Jennifer's whereabouts. Old friends, former coworkers, distant relatives who might have heard from her. Most people hadn't seen or heard from her in months, but a few provided pieces of information that helped me build a clearer picture of her recent activities. Her former neighbor, Mrs. Chen, no relation, just coincidental name, mentioned seeing Jennifer loading boxes into a U-Haul truck about 3 weeks ago. The apartment manager confirmed that Jennifer had broken her lease early, forfeiting her security deposit in her rush to leave town. A coworker from the dental office remembered Jennifer asking questions about how to wire money to Nevada banks. Another colleague recalled Jennifer mentioning a boyfriend who claimed to have connections in the gambling industry. The picture that emerged was of a woman who'd been planning this escape for weeks, maybe months. Jennifer had liquidated her apartment, quit her job, and researched financial transactions well before withdrawing the trust fund money. This wasn't an impulsive decision driven by desperation. It was a calculated betrayal planned and executed with careful attention to detail. Which meant she probably wasn't coming back, no matter how much trouble her theft caused for the family she'd left behind. Tyler started spending more time at our apartment again, helping with Mom's care and gradually opening up about his feelings regarding his mother's abandonment. He was hurt, angry, and confused, but he was also demonstrating remarkable maturity in his response to the crisis. I keep thinking about all the times she complained about not having enough money, he said one afternoon while helping Mom with her lunch. She was always talking about how unfair it was that other people got to travel and buy nice things while she was stuck working at the dentist office. That's not your fault, Mom told him gently. Your mother's choices are her own responsibility. I know, but I wonder if I was part of what made her feel trapped. Like maybe if she didn't have to worry about taking care of me, she would have been happier. The self-blame broke my heart. Tyler was carrying guilt that belonged entirely to his mother, wondering if his very existence had somehow driven Jennifer to steal from her dying mother. Tyler, listen to me, I said, setting down my coffee cup. Your mother was never trapped by you. She chose to have you, chose to keep you, chose to raise you. Those were her decisions, and she doesn't get to act like you were some kind of burden that justified stealing from Grandma. He nodded, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. Children always blame themselves when their parents failed them, as if love should be strong enough to prevent abandonment and betrayal. That evening, Tyler was unusually quiet during dinner. He pushed food around his plate without eating much, lost in thought about something that was clearly troubling him. When Mom went to bed early, he finally spoke up. Aunt Sarah, I need to tell you something. His serious tone made me set down my book and give him my full attention. What is it, sweetheart? I know where Mom and Derek are. The words hit me like electricity. You know where they are right now? I think so. Mom doesn't know that I have access to her email account. She gave me the password last year when she wanted me to print something while she was at work, and she never changed it. Tyler pulled out his phone and showed me a series of email confirmations, hotel reservations in Las Vegas, car rental agreements, even restaurant confirmations, all booked under Jennifer's name and paid for with what was obviously our stolen money. They've been staying at the Flamingo Hotel for the past 2 weeks, Tyler explained. But look at this. They just made a reservation at a place called Desert Palms Resort in Phoenix, starting next Monday. I stared at the phone screen, processing the implications. Jennifer and Derek were living it up in expensive hotels, eating at upscale restaurants, probably gambling away Mom's medical fund at casino tables, while we struggled to figure out how to pay for her next prescription refill. Tyler, this is incredible information. We need to call the police. That's what I was thinking too, but I want to make sure we do this right. Derek seems like the kind of guy who knows how to disappear if he thinks someone's coming after him. My 17-year-old nephew was showing more strategic thinking than I'd managed since discovering the theft. While I'd been focused on damage control and emotional processing, Tyler had been quietly gathering intelligence and planning a response. "What do you think we should do?" I asked. "We need to be smart about this. If we just call the Las Vegas police and report the theft, Derek will probably convince Mom to run before they can locate them. But if we wait until they get to Phoenix, we might have a better chance." "Why Phoenix?" Tyler showed me another email confirmation. They're flying from Vegas to Phoenix on Monday, then driving to the resort. Derek booked the flight using his real name, Derek Lawson, which means he's not worried about being tracked yet. I studied the travel confirmations with growing excitement. For the first time since discovering Jennifer's theft, I felt like we might actually have a chance at recovering some of the stolen money. "How do you know Derek's real name is actually Derek Lawson?" I asked. Tyler's expression grew darker. "Because I researched him after Mom started dating him. I didn't trust him from the beginning, so I looked him up online." "What did you find?" "Arrest records in 3 different states. Fraud, theft, forgery, all charges involving older women who trusted him with money. Derek specializes in targeting single mothers and widows who are financially vulnerable." The information shouldn't have surprised me, but it still felt like a punch to the stomach. Jennifer hadn't just been seduced by a charming stranger. She'd been deliberately targeted by a predator who'd identified her as an ideal victim. "Tyler, how long have you known about Derek's criminal record?" He looked ashamed. "About 3 months. I tried to tell Mom, but she said I was being paranoid because I didn't want her to be happy. She accused me of trying to sabotage her relationship because I was jealous of her attention." 3 months. Tyler had tried to warn his mother that she was dating a career criminal, and Jennifer had dismissed his concerns as teenage jealousy. She'd chosen to trust a con artist over her own son's judgment. "I should have tried harder to make her listen," Tyler said quietly. "No," I said firmly. "You warned her. You did everything a 17-year-old could reasonably do to protect his family. The fact that she ignored your warning is her responsibility, not yours." But I could see that Tyler wasn't ready to let himself off the hook that easily. He was carrying the weight of feeling like he should have somehow prevented his mother's betrayal, despite having no real power to control her choices. Over the weekend, Tyler and I developed a plan. We would contact the Phoenix police on Monday morning, after Jennifer and Derek had arrived at their resort, but before they had time to disappear again. We'd provide all the evidence Tyler had gathered, the email confirmations, Derek's criminal history, documentation of the trust fund theft, and hope that Arizona law enforcement would be more responsive than trying to coordinate with Las Vegas police from across multiple state lines. Tyler also suggested that we document everything we could about our family's financial situation, Mom's medical needs, and the impact of Jennifer's theft. The more evidence we could provide about the harm caused by the stolen money, the stronger our case would be. "I want to make sure they understand this isn't just about money," Tyler explained. "This is about Grandma's life." Sunday evening, as we finalized our preparations, Tyler asked if he could spend the night at our apartment rather than going back to his father's house. He wanted to be present when we made the call to Phoenix police, wanted to be part of the solution rather than just a victim of his mother's choices. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" I asked. "Once we report your mother to the police, there's no going back. She'll face criminal charges if they arrest her." Tyler was quiet for a long moment, processing the weight of what we were about to do. Then he looked at Mom, who was sleeping in her chair with the oxygen tube in her nose, and his expression hardened with resolve. "She stole from Grandma while Grandma was dying," he said simply. "That's not something I can forgive or ignore." Monday morning arrived with unseasonably cool weather, as if the universe was matching our somber mood. Tyler had barely slept, and I'd spent most of the night rehearsing what I would say to the Phoenix police. Mom seemed to sense that something important was happening, though we hadn't told her about our plan yet. At 9 a.m. Pacific time, 10 a.m. in Phoenix, I dialed the number for the Phoenix Police Department. Tyler sat beside me with his phone and printed emails, ready to provide backup information if needed. "Phoenix Police, how can I help you? I need to report a theft involving stolen money being brought into Arizona by suspects who are currently staying at Desert Palms Resort. The process took 2 hours of transfers, explanations, and documentation. We spoke with a desk sergeant, then a detective in the fraud division, then a supervisor who specialized in interstate financial crimes. Each person required the full story, complete with supporting evidence and detailed explanations of how the theft had impacted our family. Detective Maria Santos finally took primary responsibility for our case. She listened patiently as I explained about the trust fund, Jennifer's disappearance, Derek's criminal history, and Tyler's detective work in tracking their movements. "This is impressive information gathering," Detective Santos told Tyler over speakerphone. "You've provided more useful intelligence than most adults manage in similar situations." I just want to help my grandmother, Tyler replied, and maybe prevent Derek from finding more victims. Detective Santos promised to coordinate with hotel security at Desert Palms Resort and attempt to locate Jennifer and Derek that afternoon. She warned us that recovering stolen money was always complicated, especially when it had been spent on travel and entertainment. But she seemed optimistic about building a strong case for prosecution. We'll be in touch as soon as we have news, she promised. The waiting was excruciating. Tyler paced around our apartment, alternating between hope and anxiety about what his mother's arrest might mean for their relationship. I tried to focus on Mom's afternoon care routine, but my mind kept wandering to images of Jennifer in handcuffs, finally facing consequences for her selfishness. At 4:30 p.m., Detective Santos called back. We located the suspects at their hotel, she reported. Both Jennifer Martinez and Derek Lawson are in custody. We also recovered approximately $23,000 in cash and casino chips from their hotel room. $23,000 out of the original $147,000. Jennifer and Derek had gambled away or spent over $120,000 in less than 3 weeks. Mom's entire medical fund, blown on hotel rooms, expensive meals, and slot machines. What happens next? I asked. They'll be charged with interstate theft and fraud. Derek has outstanding warrants in 2 other states, so he'll likely face additional charges. Your sister will probably be offered a plea bargain if she cooperates with the investigation. Tyler took the phone. Detective Santos, will my mom have to go to prison? That depends on a lot of factors. Her criminal history, her willingness to cooperate, the recommendations of the prosecutor's office. First-time offenders sometimes receive probation instead of jail time, especially if they can make restitution. Restitution. The recovered money would help, but $23,000 wouldn't cover Mom's medical expenses for more than a few months. Jennifer had destroyed our family's financial security for what amounted to a brief vacation funded by theft. That evening, Tyler called his father to explain what had happened. Mark was shocked by the news of Jennifer's arrest, but supportive of Tyler's decision to help recover the stolen money. You did the right thing, Mark told Tyler over speakerphone. Your mother needs to face consequences for what she did, and your grandmother needs that money for her medical care. Do you think Mom will ever forgive me for turning her in? Tyler asked quietly. Mark was silent for a long moment. Son, if your mother can't understand why you protected your dying grandmother from theft, then she's got bigger problems than legal troubles. You acted with integrity and courage, and I'm proud of you. 3 days later, Jennifer called Collect from Maricopa County Jail. I almost didn't accept the charges, but curiosity won out over anger. I wanted to hear what she had to say for herself now, that the fantasy vacation was over, and reality had caught up with her choices. Sarah, you have to get me out of here, she said without preamble. This place is horrible, and they're talking about serious prison time if I don't cooperate. Cooperate with what? They want me to testify against Derek? Help them build cases against him for his other victims. Apparently he's done this to at least 6 other women in the past 5 years. 6 other women. Derek had been running the same con repeatedly, finding vulnerable single mothers and widows, charming them into trust, then convincing them to steal from their families to fund their escape fantasies. Are you going to testify? I asked. I don't know. Derek says if I testify against him, he'll make sure everyone knows I was the one who came up with the plan to take Dad's money. Even from jail, Derek was manipulating Jennifer, threatening her with exposure, while probably planning to pin the entire theft on her if it served his legal interests. Jennifer, Derek didn't make you steal from Mom. That was your choice. You don't understand. He made me feel like I had a chance at real happiness for the first time in years. He made me believe we could build something beautiful together. The self-pity was infuriating. Jennifer had chosen to believe Derek's lies because they justified what she wanted to do anyway. Take money that didn't belong to her and abandon the family responsibility she'd always resented. What about Tyler? I asked. What about the fact that your son is the one who tracked you down and turned you into the police? Silence. Then in a smaller voice, Tyler did that? Tyler spent weeks researching Derek's background, monitoring your email account, and providing evidence to the police. He's the reason you were caught. My own son turned me in? Your own son protected his dying grandmother from the daughter who was supposed to love her. More silence. I could hear other conversations in the background, the institutional sounds of a place where Jennifer would be spending at least the next few months. I need you to post bail? She finally said. I can't stay in here. I'll go crazy. With what money? You stole everything we had. You have your pension from the school district. You have savings. The casual assumption that I should sacrifice my financial security to bail out the woman who'd stolen from our dying mother was breathtaking in its selfishness. No, I said. What do you mean no? I mean no. I won't post bail. I won't hire you a lawyer. I won't send you money for commissary items or phone calls. You made your choices, and now you get to live with the consequences. Sarah, please, I'm your sister. My sister died when she chose a con artist over her family. When she abandoned Tyler without explanation. When she stole money from our dying mother's medical fund. I hung up while she was still talking. Tyler, who had been listening from across the room, looked relieved rather than upset by my decision. He'd grown up with Jennifer's pattern of creating crises and expecting other people to solve them, and he was ready for that cycle to end. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For not enabling her anymore. For finally letting her face consequences." That evening, Mom called Tyler over to her chair for one of their quiet conversations. I could hear fragments from the kitchen as I prepared dinner. Her gentle, "Your grandfather would be so proud of you," Mom told Tyler. "You showed real courage and integrity." "I was scared," Tyler admitted. "Scared that turning in Mom would make me a bad person." "Protecting innocent people from harm is never bad, sweetheart. You saved my life and your Aunt Sarah's future. That's the work of a hero." 6 weeks later, Jennifer accepted a plea bargain that would result in 2 years of prison time followed by 3 years of probation. As part of the agreement, she would testify against Derek in his cases involving the other women he'd defrauded. The recovered $23,000, while far short of what had been stolen, was enough to cover Mom's immediate medical needs and buy us time to explore other financial options. Derek received a much harsher sentence, 12 years in federal prison for interstate fraud, with additional charges pending in Nevada and California. Detective Santos told us that Jennifer's testimony had been crucial in connecting him to a pattern of elder financial abuse that stretched back almost a decade. "Your nephew's detective work started a chain reaction," Detective Santos explained during our final phone call. "We've been able to identify at least 10 victims and recover over $180,000 in stolen funds. That young man has a real future in law enforcement if he's interested." Tyler had decided to change his college major from computer science to criminal justice. The experience of investigating his mother's theft had revealed an aptitude and passion for detective work that surprised all of us, including himself. "I want to help other families who go through what we went through," he explained. "People like Derek prey on families during their most vulnerable moments. Someone needs to stop them." Mom's health gradually stabilized once we could afford consistent medication and treatment. The stress of financial uncertainty had been taking almost as much of a toll on her condition as the emphysema itself. With the recovered money and the assistance programs I'd finally navigated successfully, we achieved a sustainable routine that allowed her to focus on healing rather than worrying about costs. Tyler moved in with us permanently after his high school graduation. Mark supported the decision, recognizing that Tyler had found his place in our reconstituted family unit. The boy who'd once felt responsible for his mother's unhappiness had transformed into a young man who understood that love meant action, protection, and sometimes difficult choices. "I used to think family meant accepting whatever people did to you because you shared blood," Tyler told me one evening as we sat on the front porch of our new apartment. A slightly larger place we'd been able to afford once our finances stabilized. "But watching you take care of Grandma taught me that real family means choosing to show up for each other every day." The legal proceedings dragged on for months, but Jennifer served her time quietly, writing occasional letters that I forwarded to Tyler unopened. He wasn't ready to hear from her yet, and I respected his need for space to process the betrayal in his own time. 2 years and 3 months after Jennifer's arrest, she was released on parole. She called me from a halfway house in Phoenix, sounding different, smaller somehow, worn down by the experience of prison and the reality that her romantic fantasy had cost her everything that mattered. "Sarah, I know I don't deserve forgiveness," she began, her voice carrying none of the old entitlement. "But I want you to know that I understand now what I destroyed." "What do you understand?" I asked, genuinely curious about what prison and therapy had taught her. "I understand that Derek targeted me because he could see how selfish I was, how ready I was to blame everyone else for my problems instead of taking responsibility for my own life." She paused, and I could hear tears in her voice. "I understand that I abandoned Tyler when he needed me most, and stole from Mom when she was most vulnerable. I understand that I destroyed our family because I was too cowardly to do the hard work of building a real life." The apology was more complete and honest than I'd expected, but it still felt incomplete somehow. "What do you want from me, Jennifer?" "I want to earn back the right to be Tyler's mother. I want to contribute to Mom's care instead of making it harder. I want to rebuild what I destroyed, if that's even possible." "That's not up to me," I said. "Tyler's 20 now. He makes his own decisions about who he wants in his life. And Mom's condition has progressed significantly in the past 2 years." "How much time does she have?" The question I'd been dreading. "The doctors aren't sure. Maybe months, maybe a year. The emphysema has advanced to end stage, and her heart is starting to show strain from the lack of oxygen." Jennifer was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was thick with regret. "I stole her last years of security and peace. There's no way to make up for that, is there?" No, I said honestly. There isn't, but you can choose how you spend whatever time is left. Jennifer found a job at a medical billing company in Phoenix and enrolled in community college courses in healthcare administration. Every month, she sent money, small amounts but consistent, toward Mom's medical expenses. She wrote letters to Tyler that he eventually started reading, though he didn't respond for almost a year. When he finally did write back, it was a single paragraph. Mom, I'm glad you're trying to get your life together. I'm not ready to see you or talk to you on the phone yet, but I wanted you to know that I'm proud of who I'm becoming. I'm graduating next year with my degree in criminal justice, and I've been accepted to the FBI training academy. I hope someday we can have a relationship based on who we are now, not who we used to be, Tyler. Tyler had grown into exactly the kind of man Dad would have been proud to call his grandson. Strong, principled, capable of forgiveness without being naive about people's capacity to change. He visited Mom every day after classes, helped with her increasingly complex medical care, and somehow managed to maintain his optimism about human nature despite everything our family had experienced. Do you think Mom will really change? He asked me one afternoon as we sat with Mom during one of her more difficult days. I think she's trying, I said. Whether that translates into lasting change depends on choices she makes every day for the rest of her life. I hope she succeeds, Tyler said quietly. Not because I need her to, but because everyone deserves a chance at redemption if they're willing to do the work. Mom passed away peacefully on a Tuesday morning in late October, with Tyler and me holding her hands and soft jazz playing from the bedside radio. Her last words were to thank us for taking care of each other, for building something good from the wreckage Jennifer had left behind. Jennifer was granted permission to attend the funeral. She sat in the back row, crying silently, not approaching Tyler or me during the service. Afterwards, as we stood at the gravesite, she approached us hesitantly. Thank you for letting me come, she said to Tyler. Thank you for taking care of her when I couldn't. Tyler studied his mother's face for a long moment. This woman who'd given birth to him but failed to raise him, who'd stolen from his grandmother but was now trying to make amends. She forgave you, he said finally. In her last weeks, she said she hoped you'd find your way back to the person she remembered from when you were young. Jennifer broke down completely then. The weight of forgiveness, somehow harder to bear than condemnation would have been. Tyler awkwardly patted her shoulder. Not quite a hug, but not rejection either. After the funeral, as we sorted through Mom's belongings, we found a letter she'd written to all of us. In it, she thanked Tyler for his courage in protecting our family, thanked me for sacrificing my own future to care for her, and thanked Jennifer for the daughter she'd been before fear and selfishness had led her astray. I hope you can all forgive each other and yourselves, she'd written. Family isn't about perfection. It's about showing up for each other when it matters most. And Tyler and Sarah, you showed up for me every day until the end. Jennifer, I pray that you'll learn to show up for yourself and find your way back to the love that's always been in your heart. Tyler graduated from the FBI Academy 18 months later. I attended his graduation ceremony, proud beyond words of the man he'd become. Jennifer sent a card and a small gift, a framed photo of Tyler with Mom and me from her last birthday. On the back she'd written, "To my son, who became a hero when his family needed one most." At the graduation reception, Tyler introduced me to his classmates as the aunt who taught me that protecting people you love sometimes means making hard choices. He'd grown into someone who understood that justice and mercy could coexist, that holding people accountable was itself a form of love. 5 years after Mom's death, Tyler called to tell me that Jennifer had completed her parole successfully and had been accepted into a master's program in social work, specializing in family crisis intervention. She wants to work with families dealing with financial exploitation, Tyler explained. Help them navigate the legal system and find resources for recovery. What do you think about that? I asked. I think maybe she's finally found a way to turn her mistakes into something useful. She understands what it feels like to be both the victim and the perpetrator of family betrayal. Maybe that gives her something unique to offer other families. Tyler had married a fellow FBI agent named Maria, and they'd started talking about having children. The idea of Tyler becoming a father filled me with joy and hope. He would be the kind of parent who protected and nurtured, who taught by example rather than just words. If we have kids, will you tell them about what happened with Grandma and the money? Tyler asked during one of our regular phone calls. What would you want me to tell them? I'd want them to know that sometimes people you love make terrible choices, but that doesn't mean love itself is a mistake. I'd want them to know that standing up for what's right is more important than keeping everyone happy. And I'd want them to know that their dad learned how to be a good man by watching the people who took care of him when his own mother couldn't. Tyler's children would grow up knowing they came from a family that had been broken and rebuilt, that had survived betrayal and found strength in the aftermath. They would understand that integrity sometimes required difficult choices, and that real love meant protection rather than enablement. I never heard from Derek again after his sentencing, though Detective Santos occasionally updated me on his appeals process, which went nowhere. He remained in federal prison, where he would stay until his 70s, too old to charm vulnerable women into funding his schemes. Jennifer and I maintained a careful, distant relationship. She sent birthday cards and occasional updates about her work and education. I responded politely but without warmth. The trust she'd broken would never be fully repaired, but we'd found a way to coexist peacefully in Tyler's orbit. When Tyler's first child was born, a daughter they named Patricia after Mom, Jennifer sent a beautiful handwritten letter acknowledging that she'd forfeited the right to be a grandmother through her choices, but expressing gratitude that Tyler had found family members who would love and protect his children the way she should have protected him. I lost the privilege of being Patricia's grandmother when I chose to steal from her great-grandmother, Jennifer wrote. But I'm grateful that she'll grow up surrounded by people who understand that family means showing up, not just showing off. Tyler and Maria asked me to be Patricia's guardian if anything ever happened to them. I accepted the honor with tears in my eyes, understanding that I was being trusted with the continuation of the family legacy we'd rebuilt from the ashes of Jennifer's betrayal. The little girl who bore my mother's name would grow up knowing that love meant sacrifice and protection, that families could survive even devastating betrayals if the people who remained were willing to choose each other every day. She would know that her father had once been abandoned by his mother, but had chosen to become the kind of man who would never abandon anyone he loved. And maybe, if we were very lucky, she would never need to learn the hard lessons that had shaped her father's character. Maybe she would grow up surrounded by the kind of unconditional, protective love that Jennifer had received but failed to value until it was too late. Standing in the hospital room, holding my great-grandniece while Tyler slept in the chair beside Maria's bed, I thought about the chain reaction that had started with Jennifer's theft and led to this moment of perfect peace. The money she'd stolen had been recovered. The man who'd manipulated her was in prison. The family she'd tried to destroy had rebuilt itself stronger than before. And Tyler, the boy who'd been abandoned by his mother at 17, had grown into a man who understood that the most powerful form of justice was simply refusing to pass trauma on to the next generation. Little Patricia stirred in my arms, opening dark eyes that looked remarkably like her great-grandmother's. I whispered to her the same words Mom had whispered to Tyler during those difficult months after Jennifer's arrest. "You're safe, sweetheart. You're loved. And the people who love you will always protect you no matter what." Because that, in the end, was what family really meant. Not blood relations or shared genetics, but the daily choice to show up for each other, to sacrifice for each other's welfare, and to build something beautiful from whatever pieces remained after life tried to break you apart. Jennifer had taught us what family wasn't. Tyler had shown us what family could be. And Patricia would grow up knowing the difference,